Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening to our environmental science session of the webinar series. My name is Damon Jones. I'm an admission counselor at Marietta College, and tonight I'm here with Professor Eric Fitch, who is the chair of the Department of Environmental Science. Professor Fitch?
Yes, sir. Let me start out and tell you a little bit about the environmental science program here at Marietta College and the broader scope of environmental and sustainability opportunities that students have here at Marietta College. I'll start first with my program. We offer 2 majors and 2 minors under my program. We offer a degree, a bachelor's of science in environmental science and a bachelor of arts in environmental studies. And the way to think about them both are they are both interdisciplinary, so we draw upon a wide range of fields, and multidisciplinary. And if you put those 2 terms together, it's like we draw on a lot of different places, but we also actively integrate them, focused on the subject of the environment. The environmental science degree is much more heavily natural science based, so our students take a lot of biology, a lot of chemistry, a lot of geology. They also, however, take courses in environmental policy and law, environmental impact assessment, GIS, and the like. And the way to think about it is our environmental science majors, our students they're coming out with a BS, they are field problem solvers. They're the ones who address questions of conflict that have arisen of conflict between human activities and the natural environment. Our environmental studies degree, also multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, applied, and problem solving, it's much more of a social science and humanities degree, dealing specifically not with the field problems, but the human environment interface. Because anytime you are trying to address a problem in the environment, you have to have buy-in by various publics and decision makers. So the environmental studies is much more people, our students who are focusing in with background areas in political science and economics, and enough leavening of natural science so they know what they're talking about with regard to the problems. Now, our students have gone everywhere. I have a former alumna who is a vice president for environmental compliance on a major regional consulting firm with offices all up and down the East Coast. And she's the one that makes sure that on their projects what they're doing, like doing environmental impact statements and the like, that she's their wonk. She's the one that makes sure, well, you got to look at this to comply, to have the information so we can comply with this law and that. Another alumna who is actually in her same class and one of her best friends is at US EPA headquarters. And she's in the Energy Star division, and she is the lead person for all of US EPA for energy efficiency and environmental compliance and architecture. I have had students who have gone on to law school, who have gone, and a local kid, a student who was actually the son of our then police chief here on campus. So he grew up in little old Marietta, Ohio, all 15,000 people here. When he graduated, he was accepted to the top law schools across the country. He went to Pace. I'm not sure if you've all heard of Pace, but Pace is on that little old island called Manhattan, and I'm not talking Kansas. So he went from a town of 15,000 to a town of 8 million. He excelled in his program. When he graduated with a GAD in law and a master's in a dual master's, basically specializing in environmental law and corporate law, he was hired by one of the biggest law firms in the Northeast, and he kind of hated it. But between the diversity of the background we gave him here and the diversity of the background we gave him at Pace, he was approached by LexisNexis, which is the biggest online database research firm in the entirety of the legal field in the United States and overseas. But they also have people that are warm body, live body researchers. So if you come up, you're a mom and pop law firm, say in Manhattan, Kansas, and you get this huge case, but you don't have the time, the resources, or the access to do your legal backgrounding, well, you can hire LexisNexis to do that. And Mikey heads a team for the entirety of the firm. He heads up this little squad of people that can do all the background research necessary to help you with your case. They pull it together, they digitize it, and they scoot it out to you. Lickety split. I have another student for another alumna. She was she did her bachelor's degree here, and then for her master's degree, she went to Miami University over in Oxford, Ohio. And when she applied there, they have a neat little thing for graduate school that you don't apply to the programs of the department, you apply to the graduate school. And for value added sake, you can send the same paperwork into up to 3 different degree programs for consideration. And they got a bidding war over her between environmental science and the master's in technical and scientific writing. She minored in English here. She took the offer from the MTSW program. They gave her a full ride plus a living stipend. So Miami paid for her school. She graduated with the master's in technical scientific writing program. She got a job with NASA Glenn, the branch of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in Cleveland. And she spent, I think, 8 years there as a technical writer. And then she and her husband decided that they wanted a family. So she resigned from NASA and opened up her own technical writing firm at home. So she could be both a stay-at-home mom and a person who does basically technical writing for a variety of clients. I'm very proud of my graduates. I can go on forever about them because so many of them have done such wonderful things. But let me talk a little bit more about the broader opportunities for environmental degrees here at Marietta College. We just recently opened up, started a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental engineering. And this is, I'm affiliated with the program, but it's actually out of our engineering programs headed by the petroleum engineering program, which is very interesting because petroleum engineering and environmental engineering don't necessarily have the smoothest relationship in the natural world, but here they do. We also, over in Brown Hall, we also, in our bachelor's in geology, you can now specialize in environmental geology. What's nice about the program is that, especially the 2 degrees and minors over here, is that because they're interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, you're not just going to hunker down in one building for your degree. You're going to be going over to Thomas Hall, maybe and taking environmental ethics, which is a requirement in the environmental studies program and an elective in the environmental science program. We have students who take courses well, many courses in biology, but in the artistic end of biology, we have a lot of students who take scientific imaging. So even though it's taught in biology, it's a fine arts course. But one of the things about being at Marietta and in our overall milieu in terms of general education and multidisciplinary majors like ours is that you are going to walk away from Marietta College, join the long blue line with a diverse set of skills and backgrounds. Some of the courses by themselves may get you that first job after graduation. I've had a lot of students who have gone out into the world, interviewed for jobs, and they say to them, "Do you know anything about environmental impact assessment?" "Oh, I took a whole course in that with Dr. Fitch." "Do you know anything about GIS?" "Oh, I took a couple of courses with Dr. Gautam in geology and petro." And another one of our professors who is basically spearheading a geography and GIS minor. on campus. Our students are required to do a field experience, and our students are required to do a capstone. And we do a lot of learning in both because, you know, metaphorically at least, they get their hands dirty. They're able to say, okay, I learned this in the classroom, in the lab, but now I get to put it together and work in a field setting for a summer usually. And I can pull together the materials for my own senior capstone, which is not a pure science capstone, but an applied science capstone, solving or bringing up suggestions to solve an environmental problem.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds great, Dr. Fitch. Thank you so much for a brief overview and great insight to what some graduates have done out of your program. That is terrific. I wish I could work for NASA, but I'm not that. Nah, I don't qualify for that. No, but I think that's great. Could you kind of elaborate just a little bit on some internship opportunities that students are able to do, and kind of where the environmental department has connections at, just kind of throughout the state of Ohio?
Well, it's actually more than the state of Ohio. We have usually in our students' junior year, in their spring semester, they sign up for a course called Environmental ENVR 391 Experiential Learning. And the whole purpose of that spring course is for the students individually and collectively to work with me, getting their application materials together, their resume materials together, looking at opportunities, not just here, but in a much broader scope. We have had students who have gone on and done an REU. REU stands for Research Experiences for Undergraduates. If you look at the National Science Foundation and their literature and their recommendations for science education in the country, they really, really, really like small to medium-sized liberal arts colleges like Marietta. Because in your bachelor's degree in the sciences or in engineering or in math, they really value that somebody is going to get a diverse education and not just spend every waking moment in their field. And so they really like what we can do at liberal arts colleges. The one thing that we can't do, what we don't do, is to have large research programs in large standalone buildings with multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment in them, etc. Now, we're really good at doing the hands-on bench and field science, the foundations in each of our areas. But, you know, we don't have a cyclotron on campus. We don't have well, we have a scanning electron microscope, but we don't have a transmission electron microscope, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So years ago, the National Science Foundation said, why don't we set up a program where undergraduates who are going to liberal arts colleges can have a taste of that big research university experience? And so research universities are all across the country put in funding bids to bring usually a small group of undergraduates from other institutions, primarily undergraduates, to come to their campus or their field station and work with them. Now, we place students in these REUs. We place students at the University of Toledo at their Lake Erie Research Center. We've placed students in a number of other of those REUs across the country. We have placed students in everything from summer camps that need a environmental and science educator. We have put students in local facilities here. I've had a number of students over the years intern in our various factories here on the Marietta side of the river, largely between Marietta and Belle Creek, and across the river over in Parkersburg and down into Washington Hollow, where there's a huge concentration of plastics plants. So, you know, those students usually work in the occupational and environmental health sections. They intern in those. I have not only placed students as interns in both the city and county health departments, but now if I need anything out of the city and county health departments, pretty much all of the environmental sanitarians are my grads. because they liked him so much they hired him afterwards. The student I mentioned before who went to, who works for US EPA, she went from here and she got her master's at Miami University in the Institute of Environment and Sustainability. When I graduated 30 years ago from there, it was the Institute of Environmental Sciences. But anyways, I will never forget the conversation she and I had when she was a senior and we were looking at next steps in her life. And she said to me, Dr. Fitch, I grew up in Ohio. I went to kindergarten in Ohio. I went to grade school in Ohio. I went to high school in Ohio. I did my bachelor's at Marietta. When we're looking at grad schools, can we go someplace else? And so we looked and she was accepted to, if I recall correctly, she was accepted to Brown. She was accepted to, I forget what you mean. We're talking Ivy League caliber schools. They all accepted her, and Miami, which is a public Ivy. I will say that as a graduate. They gave her the best deal. They gave her a full ride scholarship, an assistantship for a living stipend. And I'll never forget, she and I were sitting across from each other, and she said, I got to take the Miami deal, even though it's in Ohio. And so I said two things. One, you almost made it because it's only 7 miles of the Indiana border from Miami, from Oxford. But two, more importantly, you have to do what's called the PIT option, or at least in my day it was called. You either have to do a practicum, an internship, or a thesis. Now you don't want to get, you've already said this, my master's is going to be my terminal degree. I don't want to go on for a doctorate. So you don't want to do the thesis. That's the only reason you want to do a thesis. So you can do a practicum or an internship. Look to do your internship outside of Ohio. That's when you can get your experience. She got a full year, full paid internship at US EPA headquarters. And they loved her so much. You know the rest of the story, they hired her full time. It's more than a decade later and she's still working there full time. Right. We have students who have worked locally with the Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge. We've had students who work with the DNR, Ohio DNR, Ohio EPA. We've had students, I had one student who was, his father worked for one of the major national automobile manufacturers. So he did his summer internship in the same factory that his father worked at. And then when he graduated, no, I'm mixing stories. He worked for a national energy company, Dominion Gas. And he did an internship with them. And when he graduated, he applied for a program that was only open for basically kids of long-term employees. And it was a middle management training program. So where he spent 6 months over the course of the next 2 years, training, learning the ins and outs of different parts of the firm. And when he graduated, when he finished the program, he got to choose which area that he wanted to work full-time in middle management. And he was the first, and to the best of my knowledge, one of a very few people accepted in that program that weren't engineers. So everybody else in his class was an engineer. Wow. Just let me tell you just another quick story about one of our alums, just to give you the breadth of where you can go.
Yeah. One
of my former students, he served 6 years enlisted in the Navy out of high school. He's a local boy. He was local man. 2 counties away in West Virginia is where he grew up. When he served his 6 years and mustered out, got his GI Bill, he came here to Marietta. He studied with me and my colleagues. He got his bachelor's in environmental science. He was about, since he was a non-traditional student, I think he was about 28 when he graduated. And he applied to become a officer. Well, and when he was going to school here, he was also an officer in the West Virginia Army National Guard. When he graduated from here, he applied to be a member of the NOAA Corps. Now, you may have never heard of the NOAA Corps. We've heard of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. We've heard of the National Uniform Public Health Service. Now we hear about the Space Force. But NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has their own ships, their own planes, their own research vessels, and they need crews and they need officers. So he was accepted to, and he went through NOAA Corps Academy. 6 months later, he was a commissioned officer in the NOAA Corps. He has had marvelous adventures, helping to put together the most detailed map of the ocean floor that's ever been made, among other things. He spent 6 months every year when he was on land, 6 months at sea. And now he's a lieutenant commander in the NOAA Corps, and he's captain of his own research vessel. And hopefully not too far in the future, we're going to have a feature piece about him and Marietta's flagship publication.
Awesome. Wow. That is definitely great insight to different students. You know, there's a billion, it seems like, opportunities out there for sure. So that's great. Great to know. Can you kind of tell us a little bit how it seems like your major is so hands-on, just the environmental part, it gets a lot of hands-on work. And right now, obviously, with the things that are happening in the world, just can't do so much hands-on, as in students aren't on campus and everything's kind of virtual. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you're dealing with that?
Well, as you probably know, like almost every other post-secondary institution in this country, we came back from we were about to come back from our spring break, and all of a sudden, we on the faculty and the students were saying, well, they were saying to the students, if you can, go home. And to the faculty, you gotta go from normal modes of teaching to online. And so I finished my normal slate of courses, all of which are integral to the environmental science and studies programs, and we did it virtually online. I'm receiving back, still receiving back some of my students' final exams, all online. And so the hardest place that we've been hit in terms of our program, and really the science program as a whole, as in labs. But we're working it out. If we need to do this in the fall, and we need to have somebody do a field lab, we're gonna do it. We're gonna, we're friendly and flexible and adaptable. I mean, it's like, hey, who better to talk to about adaptation than scientists?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's doable. I don't think any of us here are going to be honestly able to say that we are going to be able to do everything with the same quality that we would do if you were right here in front of us. But if it's called for, I really don't want to give a lecture through this. I want to give a lecture like we're having tonight, where you're there safely and I'm here safely, and we soldier on, we carry on, we talk the talk and walk the walk and get you through it and get you what you need.
Absolutely, that's great. Just kind of finish up our evening here. Just a last question that we had come in is where, do you have to get a master's degree in order to be as successful as some of those students that you talked about, just with the job field that's out there?
No, you don't have to. You don't have to get an advanced master's or professional degree. I would say, going back, and I have been here too long. I have been here going on 24 years. I'm the original first full-time director of the environmental science program. And over the years, I've had a lot of students who have said, bachelor's degree, it's good. help me get a job. I've got 3 young ladies, and it's just how the cycle goes, who are graduating this term. One of them is going on to get her master's at West Virginia University, but the other 2 are going on to the job market. And I would say we're basically a 55-45 split right after graduation. About 55 go on to graduate or professional school. About 45 go straight into the job market. And then over the years, somewhere down the line, maybe no more than a third of that 45% go on for additional training, either certifications or master's degree or law degrees or other professional degrees. You don't have to do it. But what you find is so many of our students who go out with their bachelor's degree and go to work in the corporate sector, go to work in the private sector and government, they're going to do well. They're going to advance through their workplace. But eventually they will reach a level where they can't advance anymore without an advanced degree. They can't go up the ladder anymore. And so it's usually the ones that come back to higher education are doing it out to fulfill necessities for their job, which in its own way means they succeeded. They've risen up to the ranks and topped out with what they could do with the degree. I had a student a couple of years ago who, boy, at that time, he had to have been out 12 years. He was working in the public health field. He interned here locally with the city health department when he was a student. And then he took a full-time job, if memory serves me right, over in Hamilton County in Cincinnati. But he's local. He's from the county above us, Monroe County. And he got enough experience in Cincinnati that he applied for and came home. And like I said, he was about 12 years into that job. And out of the blue, I got a call from him. And he said, Dr. Fitch, I need your help. The state of Ohio is adopting some new regulations and rules that if I don't have, and at that time he characterized it, if I don't have a graduate degree in hydrology or soil science, I may lose my job. So over the phone, I looked up the new guidelines and rules for the Ohio Department of Public Health that was putting this out. And I turned out, no, he didn't need a graduate degree. But what he needed to do was to have a certain number of graduate credits in soils and hydrology and the things that you need to have the advanced background into doing things like, well, basically septic tank inspections. Do you have the tools and the techniques? And so the two of us put our heads together on the phone and over the internet, and we found that he wouldn't have to leave home. He's married, he had kids, he had roots, but he could take the necessary graduate courses online from West Virginia University and fulfill his credentialing requirements.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Great to know. Seems like there's a lot out there. There's a lot going on. And it is really helpful, I think, professor to students that you are open to you just gave us an example that once students graduate, 12 years later, you're open, hey, give me a call. So I think that says a lot about you and your program as well. So we definitely appreciate that. Professor, if you could, before we go, can you kind of give your contact information just in case any of our students attending have any questions that they can drag straight to you, as if they drag them to me, I probably won't be able to answer their question about environmental science. So if you could just provide that slowly for them, maybe a couple times, that way everyone can get some time and get it down.
Well, Damon, don't discount yourself. I'll be working on you. When you're ready to go on for that graduate degree, we'll find you a program that'll bring you over to the light side. Anyways, all right. I'm Dr. Eric, E-R-I-C, Fitch, F-I-T-C-H. I'm the director of the environmental science program here at Marietta College, and I can talk to you about the degrees, the majors and minors in my program, but the other environmental and sustainable degree opportunities on campus. My email, which is the easiest way to get a hold of me, is Fitche, F-I-T-C-H-E, at marietta.edu. My direct phone number is area code 740-376-4997. Even in these COVID-19 days, I spend far too much time in my office, and so I'm pretty easy to contact. But like I said, usually the best and swiftest way to get a hold of me is just shoot me an email. I promise to get back to you, and I got a lot of people who vouch for me who are inquiring students before.
Great to know. So again, I'm Damon Jones with the admission department. My direct email is dlj003@marietta.edu. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have, even if it is environmental. I'll get to Professor Fitch and we'll get it figured out. So thank you guys so much this evening, and thank you, Professor Fitch. Really appreciate your time, and everyone stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you, everybody.